I've never been much for excitement. I'm the sort who likes to get invited out but always volunteers to be the designated driver, relieved because it means I get to stay sober and serious. No one expects the DD to go dancing on tables or telling wild stories. I can be shy, reserved plain Jane. I keep my nose in books and out of everyone else's business. That was why it surprised everyone, especially me, when I agreed to join Mickey and Shania in urban exploring that day. Mickey is my cousin, and Shania is her best friend. I guess I agreed to go because I was feeling a bit stung over the fact that my crush, Yasmin, who is gorgeous and has a voice that could call angels, commented to friends that I am a bit boring. And so I guess I just wanted not to be boring. To have her once a story worthy of telling over a drink. But when we got to the house, I felt uneasy. The whole neighborhood was sad, really. A story of American prosperity turned to poverty and abandonment. Entire streets with only 1 or 2 houses still occupied. The rest withering away with boarded windows and overgrown lots. Mickey picked out the house at random, saying it looked creepy. I don't know if it was any creepier than any other sad building in that cul-de-sac. The house had a yellow siding stained by weather and time, curtains hanging in the cracked upstairs windows, a short flight of stairs leading to the front door. The lower windows were all boarded and the door, of course, locked, but while I was ready to give up almost immediately, Shania's eyes sparkled at the challenge. She circled around to the back of the house, and a triumphant yell brought Mickey and me following. The back door, though boarded, had been broken into at some point over the years, and it swung open easily. Are we sure it's safe? I wondered. Shania just grinned. You gonna stay here if it's not? She asked and plunged into the darkness. And that's how it was inside. Dark. Shania and Mickey flicked on headlamps and flashlights. I only had my phone light, so Shania pulled a spare flashlight out of her backpack for me. Girl, it's just an empty house with old stuff. She squeezed my arm in encouragement. Nothing to be scared of unless you believe in ghosts. And she winked and laughed, a bold peal of laughter that lifted my spirits and made me jealous all at the same time. I didn't know how a person could laugh in the face of fear like that. I didn't really believe in ghosts. I didn't believe, but was still scared of them. Was that pathetic? I smiled weakly and thanked her for the flashlight. Mickey told me to quit being a pussy and squeezed in past me, and all 3 of us entered the living room and looked around. It looked exactly like every old person's living room. The carpeted floor was a dark beige and stained with coffee here and there. A plush armchair sat facing an ancient television, the kind that looks like a boxy cube, not a modern flat screen. I almost expected to see antennae sitting on top of the old thing. Bookshelves and hutches held books, knickknacks, cups and glasses, and many years' worth of dust. Little ceramic figurines of children and pigs with wings and big-eyed frogs, and all sorts of odds and ends looked out at us. It was cluttered, and a lot of it was broken. The wallpaper peeling and mold streaking the walls. Just a forgotten, lonely old house. Dang! Shania picked up a figurine from one of the shelves. Look at this stuff. Super vintage. Bet there's like collectibles and stuff we could take. You want to bring some back? Suggested Mickey. I wondered aloud if that counted as stealing. Both girls looked at me and I shut my mouth. Shania looked around, gesturing with her flashlight, and said, Stealing from who? She had a point. I couldn't really argue. Still, I don't know, it just feels kind of disrespectful, I mumbled. More disrespectful than leaving it all here to rot. Shania tucked a glass-eyed frog into her pocket. At least if we take some, someone's getting use out of them. Mickey took out a bag and began filling it with some of the bowls and candle holders she thought might be crystal. I was pretty sure they were just glass, though. Shania was more interested in the figurines. I looked around, unsure what to take, and finally my flashlight illuminated a ceramic lovebird sculpture. I don't know why I was drawn to it. It seemed handmade. The glaze wasn't perfect, and the wings were a little clumsy. I imagined it might have been a gift, not store-bought. Somehow the idea of a handmade gift, passed down and forgotten and then recovered, moved me. So I wrapped it up in some napkins and put it in my bag. I was still looking at the shelves, moving into the kitchen with its dirty and torn linoleum, when a scream made me jump. Back in the living room, toward the rear of the house, Mickey was shining her light on something, Shania with her, both of them whispering. Then Shania bent toward the floor. Approaching, I saw that they were looking at the staircase leading up to the second-floor bedrooms. The thought of going up there filled me with dread, and my gut bunched into knots, but my entire stomach seemed to overturn itself when I saw what Shania's light was shining on. A dark stain, just below the bottom steps, a person-shaped stain. There was the head. There were 2 arms. "Okay, that's really freaky," said Mickey. Shania, kneeling and grim-faced, was tracing her flashlight along the outline. You know what happens sometimes with old folks, and they die and no one finds them for a while. The body just lies there decomposing. This is probably where she died. She, I echoed, or he. But all these figurines and stuff make me think Grandma, not Gramps. Bet if we go upstairs, we'll find floral dresses hanging in the closets. "I'm not going upstairs," I announced. "Me either," declared Mickey. Shania wanted to go, carefully avoiding stepping on the body stain. She ascended the stairs. From up there, she called out to us about things she found. "Bathroom is a mess, yuck. Yep, lots of flower print." Stuff like that. Finally, she returned, a dusty frame in hand, and offered it to Mickey. It was a photograph of an elderly woman and a boy. "Bet that's the old woman who lived here and her family. I wonder why they didn't check on her when she fell down the stairs," said Mickey. "Who knows, maybe they're dead too. Maybe they live out of state." Shania shrugged. "Look at this neighborhood. Been emptied out a long time ago. Chances are, wherever her family lives, it's not close by. Come on, let's get out of here." Thought I heard something up there. Heard something. The hairs on my neck prickled. Like what? "Like her ghost, gonna yell at us for stealing," said Mickey and laughed. Then she and Shania raced to see who could get out first, pushing me aside. I cried out, nearly falling on that stain. "Oh God, I almost touched it." "Guys, wait," I yelled, running after them. Halfway out of the room, I'd swear I heard a sound. A voice, calling to me, and I screamed, heart hammering, my voice ripping from my lungs in a shriek of utter terror as I rushed after the others and out to the car. They wouldn't stop teasing me the whole drive back. "Your scream could have woke up the dead," Shania exclaimed. "Seriously, I thought something got you," put in Mickey. I didn't tell them how I thought I heard an old woman's voice, and they just laugh harder at me. Mickey dropped me off back home, and Shania told me she hoped I had fun and wasn't scared too much. I smiled weakly and waved goodbye and retreated up to my bedroom in my parents' house. I'm saving for enough to move out, but for now I pay a small amount of rent while I work at my uncle's shop running the register. I felt ready to cocoon myself for a good week. This would make a good story to tell when I joined everyone for drinks, but it'd be a while before I'd be up for it. I put the ceramic birds on my windowsill, trying to decide if they were cute or just creepy. A shower took off the last of the grime and the chills, and by dinner time I was feeling excited enough to share what I'd done with my friends. I snapped a pic of the birds and texted to the group chat with Yasmin and the others, explaining that I'd found the birds in an abandoned house and even seen the body stain where the old woman who owned them died. Lots of exclamations and emojis from everyone in response. Yasmin texted, "Whoa, damn girl, you gotta invite me next time." I hadn't been planning a next time. The thought of exploring more terrifying places made my pulse escalate, and not in a good, fluttery way. But if it impressed Yasmin, if it made me more interesting and less boring. Anyway, I tucked my phone away and went to bed feeling, for once, like someone who had stories to tell. Not the dull girl who looked after the shop and was so forgettably plain. The only name she could possibly have was Jane. No, I'd become someone else, brave, exciting. I had glorious dreams of dancing on tables at the center of parties, but something jolted me awake in the dead of night. I lay there, curled under my sheets, every hair on end. From somewhere downstairs came a soft wail, a moan. "Oh God, the old woman." The moaning continued. I pulled the pillow over my head and whimpered, too terrified to move. How did her wailing not wake anybody else? She was so loud. I don't know how long I lay there, wishing the wailing would stop before I drifted to sleep again. When I woke, sunlight streamed through my window. My recollection of the previous night was hazy. I assumed the wailing must have been a dream. I even laughed at myself. Here I was, plain Jane, giving myself nightmares because I was such a homebody that the slightest adventure had me spooked. I headed downstairs for breakfast and froze. On the wooden floorboards at the bottom of the stairs was a stain. The same stain we'd seen in the empty house. "Mom," I shrilled. My mom rushed out of the kitchen. "Jane, what is it?" I pointed to the foot of the stairs right where she was standing. Mom looked down, stepped back, accidentally trampling the stain as she examined the floor, and then looked back up at me questioning. "What? Honey, what is it?" "The stain," I whimpered. "Stain," she echoed, dropped down to her knees, peering close. "Where?" She couldn't see it. She was right on it and couldn't see it. Never mind," I said. Hurrying back to my room, I snatched my phone, came back and took a picture of the stain to send to Mickey and Shania. Except, it didn't show up. I could see it on the floor, see it right there with my own eyes. But when I tried snapping a pic with my phone, nothing on the screen. "Sweetie," Mom's brow knit in concern. "Everything all right?" Yeah. I smiled feebly. Having lost my appetite, I went to work without breakfast. After my shift when I came home, the stain was still there. If anything, darker than before. But Mom and Dad went up and down the stairs without seeing it. I went upstairs and got the birds, considered shattering them and scattering the pieces, but as I held up the little ceramic sculpture ready to drop it on my floor, pangs of guilt had me setting it carefully back down. I should return it to the house, I thought. Until then, I wrapped it up and tucked it deep into my closet. Out of sight, out of mind. Hopefully, once it was back in its place, the stain would disappear. The moans persisted. Every night, always around the same time, the stain persisted as well. As for Mickey and Shania, they refused to take me back to the house to return the birds. They didn't want to go back and didn't believe me about any of it, especially after Mickey came to my parents' home and couldn't see the stain. She asked if I was just making it up for attention. I'd have been angry, furious at my cousin for throwing such an accusation in my face. If I hadn't been so terrified in that moment because just behind her stood an old woman. Things got worse. The old woman appeared randomly in my house, always near the stairs. Sometimes I'd see her come out of a room. Sometimes she'd be hovering by the window looking confused. Other times she was looking right at me. One night I arrived home after midnight. I'd been out with friends doing my usual shift as the DD. No one really noticed how morose I was. My thoughts that night were on Yasmin and my social situation, and wondering if I would ever break out of my own shell. When as I headed upstairs, a cold and clammy hand gripped my ankle. Shrieking, I ripped free. My shrill scream woke my mom and dad, who rushed out. Dad with his fists up, ready to fight whatever intruder was apparently murdering his daughter. I rushed into my room and slammed the door, sobbing. When I came out, there was no one there. Nothing. Just my parents looking at me concerned. They asked me if I'd be willing to see a psychiatrist. I thought maybe a medium would be better, and I found one online who did a teleconference with me. She recommended the same thing my instinct had told me to do initially: destroy the ceramic birds. I'd taken a personal item, she said, something that meant something to the deceased. If this object was what had brought the ghost into my home, destroying it would free me. Next day when I returned from work, I retrieved the birds from upstairs. I'd decided that rather than destroy them, which just seemed disrespectful, I'd start by returning them to the house where I found them, even if it meant I had to go back there alone. But I'd just left my room and barely reached the bottom of the steps when cold fingers clasped my ankle. I shrieked, jerking free and rushing for the door. The ghost, trying to grab me. As I reached the front door, I spun back, glaring over my shoulder. I could see her now, the ghost of the old woman. She lay at the bottom of the steps, her fingers curled into claws and her face a grimacing snarl. Her mouth opened in a wail. I stood there for a long time staring, and then I came back over to the stairs, and when I knelt down, she grabbed my arm, so tight. Her icy hand left strange imprints on my skin. I held the birds down to her and with my other hand clasped hers. I don't know what gave me the courage to suddenly do this, but now I heard what it was she'd been wailing over and over again. "Help," she groaned. "I'm here," I said. Her hand squeezed tighter. "I'm sorry I ran away before. I don't know who gave you these birds, but they must have loved you very much. I'm sure they wish they could have been there for you." She was listening now, her mouth still a grimace of pain. "I'm not religious and I don't know any prayers, so I just kept saying, 'I'm here, you're not alone. Here are the birds, here's my hand.'" I don't really know what else I said. My vision was blurry and I didn't realize that tears were streaming down my cheeks until I blinked and squeezed my eyes shut and reached up to wipe them clear. And when I looked down again, the old woman was gone. I was alone. Just me sitting there at the bottom of the steps with some dusty ceramic birds in my palm. The stain was gone. The medium told me I should get rid of the birds anyway, but I didn't. I went upstairs and put them back on my windowsill. They sit there still. I'm keeping them for someone who shouldn't have been forgotten.